So now that you've started working in the NHS, I'm 100% sure you've come across people who say that they're going to do something, say that they're going to apply for training or get some forms signed, get some feedback, progress on to the next stage. You meet them 3 months later, 6 months down the line, and they're still exactly where they are. In today's video, what we're going to be talking about is trying to avoid being that person. Today we're going to be talking about getting your CREST form signed, but really and truly it's going to be a lot more than that. You can think of your CREST form as something that you will use in order to show a high level of activity, professionalism, and commitment about you. When I say that you should get your form signed quickly, why do I say that? Well, first of all, the level of competitiveness between the specialties is getting higher and higher every year. There are even talks about IMGs not getting into training as an equivalent of UK graduates anymore. So that just means that the faster that you act, the more likely you are to get into the last few rounds where things are still possible for you to get in. Another reason why it's really important is if you're working to get your CREST form signed and you show that you're quick about it, this will give an idea to the people that you work with how you are at doing things. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that the consultants that you're going to be working with, the registrars, the nurses that you're going to be working with are going to notice a high level of commitment from yourself. That means you say that you're going to do something and then you act on it quickly. Whether that means that you're going to have to stay back to get it done, whether that means you have to chase people to get it done, it just shows that extra level of work that you're willing to put to get things done rather than just doing the bare minimum and taking it slow and not really prioritizing it. Another important thing about getting your CREST form signed is that it will show that you are a very efficient person. Okay, you have to understand that you work alongside a lot of people that are very slow, and things move very slowly in the NHS, and that's just a common thing amongst all sort of public hospital systems. And if you're the person who is getting things done quickly, is efficient, they see you the week after and you've already had most of the things that you said you were going to do done, you've already come back to them by email, you've submitted things, then they understand, okay, this person's serious. They're not just here to take a couple of years until they figure the things out. They're not here to waste time. That's what they understand about you. And all of this is going to feed into getting you opportunities when you want to take the next step, whether it's training, whether it's Caesar, whatever you plan. Getting your CREST form signed can also be a chance for you to show a high level of professionalism, because there are parts in the CREST form, when you go through it, you're going to realize that if you're somebody who has a good in-depth knowledge about medical pathways and guidelines, and is somebody who understands discussions with seniors, can ask the right kind of questions, get the right kind of feedback, that's just going to show that you want to be a high level doctor, not just somebody who's going to eventually finish at a very standard basic level. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you just want to get by, it's okay. But if you're somebody who aspires to be something more than that, then this is sort of the start for you. This is the chance to show that you want to not just be a basic doctor, you want to be somebody at the high level. So now that you know why it's important to get your CREST form signed quickly, these are going to be some tips and tricks that will help you get through that. So the first thing that you need to work on is to find the right person who's going to sign your CREST form. And why do I say that? Because the last thing that you want to do is to pick a consultant, talk to them about getting it signed, and a few months down the line you've not had any progress, they are not replying to your emails, they're not interested anymore, and now you have to start from scratch. You have to find somebody else, establish a rapport with them, get them to give you feedback continuously, and that just delays things. Okay. Now I understand that sometimes that's just out of your control, and you might pick somebody and they turn out not to be who they are. But there are a few things that can help you identify the right person to get it signed quickly. So, what are some of the characteristics of somebody who would be ideal to sign your CREST form? So, of course, they're going to be somebody who's finished their CCT or their CSAR. They're on the specialty register on the GMC. You can look it up, and that's just a basic requirement. They're going to have to work with you for 3 months before signing it. But what you want to identify is, as part of the consultant body in your department, who of these is actually in frequently? Who's involved in the department, in teaching, in feedback, in supervising trainees, in high level skills, the person that people usually go to. So why is it important to pick such a person? Well, there are a lot of people that you might work with that are, for example, locum consultants. Some of them might only come once or twice a week, so it's going to be difficult for them to witness you doing certain things, to have discussions and get feedback from them, because they're not in that frequently. Or even if they are, sometimes it's not necessarily a locum consultant, it's a full-time consultant, but they're just reached, you can tell after working a few days with them, they are at that stage where they are absolutely not interested in anything other than doing the minimum at work, finishing on time, and leaving. Right, they're no longer interested in teaching, they're no longer interested in giving feedback to anybody. They are, sorry to say, but quite miserable at work. And I'm not judging them, I'm just giving the facts. That if you come across such people, it's just best to try and find someone else. Somebody who's not necessarily enthusiastic about, signing forms and getting feedback for you, but just someone who's at least willing, approachable, and is just frequently in the department, so that you can talk to them at least a couple of times a week. And maybe if you've come across talking to them by email before, they do reply somewhat promptly. Now, after you've identified the person who you think is going to be the right person to sign your CREST form, the next thing is to formulate a plan. I think that the best way to go on about it is to have a plan ready before you even approach them. That just takes a lot of cognitive load off the conversation. And it shows that you are going to be the person doing most of the work. Because you have to understand that people you're working with, they have already trainees to look after. They have a lot of admin work at this point, plus the hours they have to come in. They're on call, it's busy, and what they don't want is somebody that they have to essentially take care of. Okay, they want somebody who's ready, who's got a good knowledge of what they need to be doing, and just asking for quick feedback, quick forms to be signed, and they'll be more happy to do it. So now that you want to formulate a plan, one way that you can go about it is go through the CREST form and group the sections of it into certain actionable tasks. So what do I mean by that? You can look at, for example, section 1 and say, okay, this one has a lot to do about my practice. Okay, so how am I going to show my consultant that I'm going to fulfill the criteria in section 1? A few things. If you just go through it and you formulate 4 or 5 points as tasks for section 1, that would be one way I would go on about it. So for example, you would have your portfolio ready, set, you've got your login, you have knowledge of how to send CBDs, DOPs, mini-kecs, etc. And now you're going to say, okay, action number 1, whenever I see consultant, whatever their name is, and I've got a certain case that I'm looking after, I'm going to ask them if they can witness me taking the history or doing an examination, or have a discussion with them about the plan. And okay, so one of the sections is about holistic planning. I'm going to mention that the patient's family have not been contacted. Maybe I should contact them, or the patient might not be able to go home because of social circumstances. So you go through the section, and then based on that, You make 4 or 5 points that you think, okay, this is how I'm gonna actually show my consultant that I've completed these action points. So that's mostly for section 1. Just make sure your portfolio is on point, a lot of feedback, and ideally what you want is enough feedback from the same consultant who's going to sign the form. Because like I said, when we're trying to do things quickly, you don't want them to be able to only tick a few of the boxes of the CREST form and then have to talk to somebody else, and that person confirms that they've seen you do the rest of the things. They have to sign, and another person has to sign, and it just becomes a faff. A lot of emails, a lot of time, people are on annual leave, takes weeks and weeks. When it comes to section 2, it's again a similar approach, but you can just tweak it a little bit more tailored to section 2. So you can let the consultant know, okay, for section 2, I'm currently being involved in data collection for a QI project or an audit. I've signed up to do some teaching for medical students, and see if they would happy to attend. And if you give them enough time ahead of the actual day of teaching, they might be able to show up and see that you're doing some teaching. And sometimes, for example, in medical handovers or A&E handovers, a lot of times the consultants attend these handovers, so use that as an opportunity to show that your handovers are safe, they are thorough, but at the same time, straight to the point, where your colleagues are focused on what you're talking about. It's not just a load of words being said. Everybody's attentive when you're talking. You are aware of who's more unwell, who should be prioritized, and that just indirectly demonstrates the essentials that are there in section 2. For section 3, what you're going to do is show them that you are progressing from when you first came in, because everybody's got an idea of the level of competence of a new doctor joining a department, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a really good thing. It's a starting point. What they want to see is that you've overcome some hurdles. Now you have acquired a certain level of knowledge, you've got some skills, and you are improving, you're heading in the right direction, and you've got also a target in mind. You want to get into a particular specialty. You know what the criteria is for that specialty, what's required, what kind of exams do they have for that specialty. It just shows that you're a professional who's heading towards a higher level of training, not just somebody who wants to get by. You can do this in direct ways and in indirect ways. So, for example, let's say you come across some guidelines for management of particular illness. You are not sure about certain things. You have to be genuine about this. We're not trying to make this up. There are certain parts of it that you're not sure of, or you want to ask somebody about. It's best to ask the person that is going to be signing your forms, because now they're thinking, okay, so this person is actually going online trying to find out what the most up-to-date guidelines for management is, or diagnostics. They're keeping up with the current practice, right? And they're also eager to put it into actual practice where they work. So that's why they're asking me. It's also a form of recognition of their level of expertise. So you are not just going by what you read, but you're trying to understand how in real life this can be applied, and that just shows a high level of professionalism. Another part that you can talk about in section 3 is, let's say the consultant that you're working with is actually in the specialty that you're going to be applying to, which is quite frequently the case. Might not always be, but it might be. Or they might know somebody who is in the specialty that you are interested in. So one way that you can approach this is, if you've got some time, you can make this a bit casual. Just talk about their career. Be curious, see how they've come about their choices for their career, what their thoughts are about the current situation in that specialty, some hurdles that they've had to overcome, and what they think about the idea of getting into it. It just shows that you've got some level of interest in their specialty. Just to emphasize that last point, you have to understand that the consultants that you're working with, unfortunately, are not always being recognized for their efforts. In many countries around the world, they might be getting paid more, they might get more off time, they don't have to have so many duties. And over here, because of the nature of the system, a lot of them are treated equally, whether they're the best of the best or they're just the most basic consultants. So if you're somebody who, first of all, has to be genuinely impressed by their level of knowledge and expertise, you can show that. You can show that appreciation indirectly, saying things like, I know you're really good at this, do you mind if I ask you a question about it? And it just shows that level of appreciation. And that can be used in the sense of establishing a good level of rapport, not to just using them, but just so that they understand, okay, this person wants to become at my same high level, so I'm going to be more willing to help them out to reach these goals. The last point that I'm going to be talking about, it essentially feeds into what we've been talking about since the very beginning, which is to be a professional about getting your things signed off. So once you've established that you've had enough time working with that consultant, they can see that you've ticked all the boxes, and now that they're happy to sign it, by the time you've arranged a time to get it signed, you should have that paper already filled out, completed with all your details, their email, whatever it is, whatever boxes you need to fill, just for them to have a look, tick the boxes that they're convinced of, and sign. And it just shows that, like I said in the first point, you are taking on the work of prioritizing your career, and they don't have to run around chasing you, convincing you of doing things quickly, of doing things efficiently. You are already set to do these things on your own. And as you all know, they're all busy with these things, so they don't have much time. They would always prefer if somebody has filled out everything and they just want to sign it as quickly as possible, and that's it. So I hope that today's video has been helpful to get you to understand the way the system works and how to use this opportunity to get your CREST form signed into something more than that, as a lifestyle while working in the NHS, to do things quickly. And I'll see you in the next video.